Malaysia and the Philippines just signed the Artemis Accords, making it 56 nations. The International Asteroid Warning Network released a notice on 3I Atlas. US Senator Kirsten Gillibrand thinks that if the US government did come out and say, yes, we have the alien technology, it wouldn't create public panic. Secretary of State Marco Rubio previously said that multiple whistleblowers had shared information with him about highly classified UFO programs and were afraid for their safety. Images of 3I Atlas recorded by 3 sun-facing coronagraph instruments are analyzed in a paper released by 2 astronomers on October 28. Vice President J.D. Vance still intends to get to the bottom of the UFO issue in the next 3 years. These stories and more on Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome to the November 1st edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. I want to thank you all who have subscribed to my X channel. We have reached or are about to reach 100,000 subscribers. A very nice milestone, just shows that X really is the platform for getting news out there. And I appreciate your support and subscription. So thank you very much. Okay, so I want to begin with this tweet or X post by Anjali. And it concerns a prediction that John Ramirez received. And I've seen his interview where he talks about the year 2027 concerning the prospect of extraterrestrials or UFOs being disclosed to the general public. So Anjali is herself someone who has experiences with extraterrestrials, and she had a private 2021 talk with Ramirez concerning 2027. So that was 6 years ago. So that was something that helped John Ramirez develop his understanding that 2027 was going to be a very important year for disclosure. And she also in her tweet points out that the year 2027 or 2026, and she points to another experiencer, Chris Bledsoe, who talked about next year, 2026, as being a big year when it comes to disclosure. And she talks about rumored intelligence. I don't know if that's an actual intelligence category, but still fun to talk about rumored intelligence, rumint, that there was a 1970s classified document that also talked about 2027. But the earliest prediction one of the earliest predictions is Sean David Morton's prediction that was made in 1997, where he talked about this asteroid that was going to impact the Earth. So he talked about something happening in 2027 that had major significance, but it concerned an asteroid. So yes, so this is interesting in terms of these references to 2027, and that and Anjali was one of the sources for John Ramirez, who's kind of like widely cited, and I've cited him several times where he has talked about 2027. And of course, Sean David Morton mentioning it, not so much in terms of UFO disclosure, but in some kind of asteroid impact. So 2027 certainly is a year that multiple sources have pointed to as being a significant year, whether it's in terms of UFO disclosure or something else. I guess we'll find out. Here is another interview I did with Rebecca Rose, who has experiences in the secret space programs where she got to serve with an organization called the Dark Fleet, and that they had trained her to be used as a super soldier, and that she had implants that helped her achieve her fullest potential as super soldier in the German Dark Fleet. Now, what's very interesting is that in this particular interview, we've done, I think this is our third interview. In this interview, Rebecca realized that she actually is a galactic envoy. In other words, she is one of these starseeds who agreed to incarnate on Earth and do so while her partner would work with a galactic organization and kind of like watch over her while she served on Earth or lived her life on Earth. And that, in fact, her job was to be a double agent. In other words, she would allow herself or volunteered to be used by the Dark Fleet, by the Draco reptilians in many ways that were very abusive. And that was done to gather intelligence on what they were doing, because all of her experiences would then be relayed to the Galactic Federation, because she, in fact, was a starseed or an envoy part of the Galactic Federation. And this is interesting. This is something I first heard about from Niara Isley, who worked with the US Air Force, and she talked about how in the early 1980s she was abused, taken into one of the secret space programs, abused on Mars, taken to the moon as well, where she was abused. And she remembers quite clearly that they only released her when an extraterrestrial pointed out that she was a starseed for one of the more highly evolved extraterrestrials, and everything she was experiencing was being recorded. So this is the way in which apparently the galactic envoys operate, who are on Earth and incarnated and often are targeted at birth and subjected to these secret space programs without the Earth authorities realizing that these are actually people who are part of let's say, an evolved extraterrestrial organization, more highly technologically developed, and that everything that happens to them is recorded as evidence. And that's something that's very interesting, given that we have been hearing a lot of stories about tribunals coming up, deep state officials being arrested, and evidence being used. And I think this is actually a very real thing. It's a very real process where people who are subjected to these kinds of abuses, rather than them being victims because of the deep state's shenanigans and draconian kind of repression, that they are double agents gathering evidence. So that's a very interesting development. Okay, so we heard about Malaysia and the Philippines signing the Artemis Accords, making it 56 nations. So all these nation space programs have signed bilateral accords with the United States and with the US State Department and NASA to conduct future space exploration, mining, tourism, etc. So here you have the flags of the 56 nations, Malaysia and the Philippines, being the latest additions to that collection. And so, we always need to ask ourselves, why are countries just lining up to sign on onto the Artemis Accords, which are these bilateral agreements with the United States State Department and with NASA? Why aren't the nations demanding some kind of multilateral agreement under the United Nations where no one nation dominates? Because with these bilateral accords, all signed with the United States, the US becomes like the hub of a wheel. So you have 55 spokes at the moment of that wheel, each one representing a country. And in the center is the United States. So it's the hub. So why are countries signing up? Why are they not signing up to alternatives like China's International Lunar Research Station, which only has 13 nations who have signed up, most of which, aside from Russia, have really minuscule space programs. So the big difference is that the United States is offering signatory nations the opportunity to have access to advanced space technologies. And I have spoken in the past about several missions JP has done to an underground base in Huntsville, Alabama. Well, actually not Huntsville. What we know is that it was in northern Alabama, and I assume it is near Huntsville, Alabama, under a place called Green Mountain. And what JP observed there was that on one of his missions, he was taken there on a bus, and there were 33 pilots, international pilots from all over the world, that were on this bus. And he and one other guy were observers. So they were taken underground into this huge spaceport, and in this spaceport were hundreds of spacecraft, flying saucer-shaped craft, and beside each of these craft, you could see people working on them, and these Nordic-looking extraterrestrials. So when the bus stopped, all 33 pilots basically just jumped off the bus and just ran to one of these spacecraft where they greeted the Nordic. And these were international pilots. So what's happening is that the United States secret space program is collaborating with other nations in training their pilots to be able to fly these hybrid human extraterrestrial spacecraft, which have all kinds of advanced technologies such as mind and technology interfaces, so that they could fly these craft just with their minds. And so that helps us understand why it is so many nations are signing on to the Artemis Accords, and why relatively few countries have signed on to China's International Lunar Research Station initiative, because China is well known for really not giving access to its most advanced technologies to its partners. And that's contrary to the US. All right, so here we have an interview featuring Ross Coulthart, and here he talks about people that he has interviewed who have come into contact with a blue being who downloaded information into them. So let's listen to what Ross Coulthart has to say here.
I'm talking to people at the moment, and this is creepy, but people at the moment who are contacting me, and I've had 3 do it now from all over the world, who say they've felt an urge to contact me, and they tell me that they've communicated with a blue being that has imbued them and downloaded them with information. And in one case, the person developed an ability instantaneously understand physics equations, highly complex mathematics. And I've seen them do it.
Okay, well, Ross Coulthart, Australian journalist, well known in Australia, and also has been putting out a lot of stories on UFOs through News Nation. And he's talking about people being contacted by these blue beings who have activated these individuals in some way and downloaded them with advanced information, including complex mathematical formulas. Now, I know that one of the people that I've interviewed several times is Dave Rossi, and I think that the person Ross Coulthart was describing, who had these complex mathematical formulas downloaded into him, was Rossi. And interestingly, Dave Rossi, before he had the contact with this blue being, he was a plumber, but then he got activated after this interaction, and he has been developing these complex mathematical formulas for understanding how exotic technology operates. And interestingly, he's been working with some of the top scientists in the world who have specialized in exotic technology. So, and he showed me email exchanges he's had with them. So that's corroboration for Dave's story. And this is very interesting, how contact with extraterrestrials can activate a person. There have been many others who have talked about their interactions with extraterrestrials and receiving downloads. One of these people is Alex Collier, and he says he interacted with these Andromedan extraterrestrials who were blue, very tall, or actually not necessarily tall though. One of them was very tall and another one was much shorter, but he was interacting with these Andromedans, and they downloaded a lot of information into him. So yeah, this is one of the ways in which extraterrestrials operate, that they can download information into people, and that later on that information can come out in many ways. Okay, I did an interview on Redacted where I discussed the International Asteroid Warning Network notice on 3i Atlas and the real reason why nations continue to join the Artemis Accords. So I talked already about why nations are joining the Artemis Accords. As for the International Asteroid Warning Network notice, I mean, that just shows
what is happening with
that. Just indicates that there is great concern by those in the national security complex over how 3i Atlas is going to behave in the months ahead, as it completes perihelion with the sun, as it starts to approach its proximity with the Earth, its closest point with the Earth, and that there's a possibility that 3i Atlas will either fragment if it's a comet, or, as I think is more likely to be the case, it's going to release probes that are going to be sent off to different planets or moons, and that some of these probes may head towards the Earth. And so I think that this appeal to international astronomers to study to conduct what they call astrometry of 3i Atlas is not just a training exercise, which is what the notice ostensibly is. It's framed in terms of it being a training exercise, but I think in reality, the powers that be are very concerned that 3i Atlas is going to release dozens, maybe hundreds of probes that will spread out through our solar system, and some of them will come to the Earth. And so they want to have all eyes on the skies to track all of these to find out what they're doing, because this would represent a really an unprecedented event. And certainly the other possibility is that this is something that the White Hats are wanting to do in terms of getting international astronomers to pay attention, because 3i Atlas is going to do things and behave in a way that's going to conclusively demonstrate that it is an artificial object, and that will rock the scientific world, and the question of are we alone will be forever over. But it will also do it in a way that is very gentle, very soft, because it'll be like, well, this is an artificial craft. We don't know where it comes from, and we can only guess. And that will kind of like set the groundwork for people to start asking questions and familiarizing themselves with some of the information that's out there on extraterrestrial life, and therefore they will be prepared for a future disclosure. All right, well, talking about preparing for future disclosure, here is US Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is acknowledging some of the information she received from whistleblowers, credible whistleblowers, that the US has in its possession some extraterrestrial technology.
My job as a senator is to get to the bottom and to know facts.
U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand speaking with NBC News last November as Congress heard from former pilots, experts, and people who claim to be government whistleblowers to learn more about the government's investigation of UFOs, now called UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. Working with Republicans, she set up a Pentagon unit called ARROW for All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office to fully investigate such sightings and testimony regarding the possibility of alien spacecraft or even now underwater vehicles. The senator said last week that about half the sightings can be explained as weather balloons or other aircraft.
So that means there's 50% that's still unidentified. That's a highly concerning number. I think we have to continue to investigate all sightings. So we just know what are these UAPs? Are they drones? Are they adversaries? Or is it other? But we need to know.
And then on previous claims of a government cover-up about UFOs or UAPs.
There was something going on at the DOD at some point. There was some reporting on this, where they did have people sign non-disclosure agreements saying that they're working on alien programs, saying they're working on programs of alien materials. And so you have hundreds of people who signed these non-disclosure forms. And the non-disclosure form said things like, if you reveal that you're signing this, you are a penalty of perjury or death.
If the government did come out and say, yes, we have alien technology, we've seen it, we've seen these UFOs. I think you indicated some have actually been shot down, too. What the concern that would cause panic in the public?
If it is, in fact, otherworldly, that's very interesting. And I don't think it creates panic. I think at the end of the day, we need to know, are we safe? Like, what's going on in the world? Are our pilots safe? What are they seeing when they're flying? Why do they keep running into drones? Like, these are really important questions.
All right, so there you have Senator Kirsten Gillibrand revealing some of what she was told by whistleblowers. And so it's quite clear that she and other members of the US Congress are being told that some of these technologies have been captured, that they are in these classified programs, and that she thinks that people should be told what's going on and that it is safe to do so, that the public can handle the truth. And so that shows some of the attitude by members of Congress about why it's important to get to the bottom of the UFO issue and to reveal it to the general public, and that doing so is actually safe. rather than a threat, as I guess the deep state wants to portray it. All right, so here is a segment or a tweet where current Secretary of State Marco Rubio talks about some of the information he received about whistleblowers who shared information concerning highly classified programs and them being afraid for their safety and facing retaliation from the US military intelligence community. And the question that's raised is, well, Marco Rubio first heard about this while he was a US senator. Now he is Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, and what's he doing about it? So let's listen what he said when he was a senator and match that with what he's done as the current Secretary of State, National Security Advisor.
We'll say there are people that have come forward to share information with our committee over the last couple of years. I would imagine some of them are potentially some of the same people that perhaps he's referring to. I want to be very protective of these people. A lot of these people came to us even before these protections were in the law for whistleblowers to come forward.
Sorry, people who have had firsthand knowledge, who claim to have firsthand knowledge of seeing this type of thing? Or
have firsthand knowledge or firsthand claims of certain things. Some are public figures, and you've heard from them in the past. Others, have not shared publicly. And so we're trying to gather as much of that information as we can. And the reason why I'm being cautious, I'm not trying to be evasive, but I am trying to be protective of these people. Some of these people still work in the government. And frankly, a lot of them are very fearful of their jobs, fearful of their clearances, fearful of their career. And some, frankly, are fearful of harm coming to them.
So that category of people who have firsthand knowledge, who say they have actually seen these kinds of things, do you find many of them credible?
Well, I don't find them either not credible or credible because we have no basis. Understand some of these claims are things that are beyond sort of the realm of what any of us has ever dealt with. What I think we owe them is just a mature, understand, listening and trying to put all these pieces together and just sort of intake the information without any prejudgment or jumping to any conclusions in one direction or another. I will say I find most of these people at some point, or maybe even currently, have held very high clearances and high positions within our government. So you do ask yourself, like, what incentive would so many people with that kind of qualification, these are serious people, have to come forward and make something up?
Right. So you have to ask yourself, Marco Rubio, when he was a US Senator, was very concerned about whistleblowers being retaliated against who was sharing information concerning these classified UFO programs. But now, given that he has power, significant power as the acting National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, what's he doing to protect these whistleblowers and to expose covert UFO programs? Well, I think the point that's being made here in this tweet is that he's done very little. And the American people are counting on you, but he's done very little. So hopefully that will change. We shall see. Right, so here is an image or several images of 3I Atlas as it approached perihelion with the sun. So it approached perihelion on October 29, and here is a paper by two astronomers, Shisheng Zhang and Carl Buttams. This paper was released on October 28, and they show 3I Atlas rapidly brightening as it approached perihelion for reasons that are not known to the authors, so they didn't anticipate that. So let's just have a look at some of these images that were captured. These were captured using different sun-facing coronagraphs. So these are scientific instruments that are pointed towards the sun and are really designed to track the sunspots, coronal mass ejections, solar flares, and so forth, track the behavior of the sun. So that way, if any geomagnetic storms are going to happen on the Earth, that we could receive advance notice of that to take precautions, because geomagnetic storms can really interfere with electronics on Earth. So these images come from a number of sun-facing scientific instruments. So they show 3i Atlas. So here you have 3i Atlas, and this is coming from one of these sun-facing scientific instruments. I believe this one is the GOES 19. This one here on the left. And then you have some other images showing 3i Atlas. This is from the stereo coronagraph. And the one at the bottom here is the SOHO coronagraph, which is the oldest of the coronagraphs. So it shows that even though the 3i Atlas is very close to the sun from the perspective of Earth, either directly behind it or just to the side of it. Well, actually, when these images were taken, 3i Atlas was approaching the sun from the perspective of the Earth, but they weren't quite behind the sun yet. And because these instruments are designed to block out the sun and capture what's happening around the sun or in the vicinity of the sun, they were able to give the latest imagery of 3i Atlas, which shows it as a kind of bright spot, no tail, and some people are now speculating that rather than 3i Atlas being a cigar shape, that it's actually a sphere. It's a spherical shape. So that will be very interesting, because we're going to find out as 3i Atlas leaves the vicinity of the sun and starts to head off towards Jupiter, and the Earth's telescopes will be able to focus on 3i Atlas, and then we'll get a better images of what it looks like. Here's a interview I did with a very talented psychic, Brad Johnson, who has been doing work for well over a decade in getting intelligence information from different extraterrestrials through communications. And he has been really doing some stellar work in giving us an idea of what is coming. And he is saying or predicting that in 2026, there is going to be a deep state collapse, and that there will be major disclosures as a result. And he describes major infighting among the different deep state factions, that because resources are being squeezed, because the Earth Alliance, the White Hats have been really tightening, or let's just say taking away the kind of black budget funding or sources of finance that the deep state has been relying on for decades. And we're talking about, say, slavery, sex trafficking, drug trade, and so forth. All these things are being squeezed by the Earth Alliance, who are cracking down worldwide on all of these illicit activities. And the result is that deep state funding is collapsing, and so these different deep state factions are fighting against one another, and that this is going to lead to global revolution in 2026 as the deep state's control collapses, and that there'll be major disclosures. So we do look forward to that. Okay, so here is the latest news. 3i Atlas appears to have accelerated during its perihelion with the sun, either due to outgassing or an artificial propulsion system, as Professor Avi Loeb explained in his latest paper regarding the the possibility of it having some artificial propulsion system. And so in his article titled First Evidence for a Non-Gravitational Acceleration of 3I Atlas at Perihelion, he writes, alternatively, the non-gravitational acceleration might be the technological signature of an internal engine. This might also explain the report on 3I Atlas getting bluer than the sun. So what was observed using these coronagraph instruments was that 3I Atlas accelerated. Now, that acceleration could be due to outgassing, that a normal comet, as it approaches the sun or is in perihelion with the sun, heats up, a lot of gases explode, and that gives a kind of propulsive boost to that comet, accelerating it. Or that there is some kind of internal engine, and that internal engine is firing up, taking advantage of its perihelion with the sun to perform something called the Oberth maneuver, whereby an object can accelerate or decelerate and use the sun's gravitational field in a kind of slingshot effect. So this is first evidence of a non-gravitational acceleration. So Avi Loeb has been tracking all of the anomalies of 3I Atlas, and I think this is probably the 9th or 10th anomaly that he has identified that points to 3I Atlas being artificial rather than a comet. All right, so here we have a very interesting interview that Vice President J.D. Vance did on a podcast where he talks about his desire to get to the bottom of the UFO issue and that he's got 3 years to do it. So let's listen to what Vice President Vance has to say.
One last question about UFOs. So I'm a mad UFO lunatic as well. Yeah. So, and you said, I think the Ruthless podcast, that you were going to, in August, you were going to figure out what happened. So have you
That was a little tongue-in-cheek. I've not figured it out yet. Right. I haven't had the time to figure it out yet.
But you've got access to all this.
I do. And I really want to sort of dig into it. You know, Marco's actually very interested in this too. We talked about this talked about this back in our Senate days. So there's certainly an interest there. There's certainly an intrigue, but I haven't yet had the time to really dig in. Things have been so busy, but this is the crazy person inside of me. And there's, all of us put the tinfoil hat on from time to time. I was like, I can't allow myself to become so busy that I spend the next 3 years and I don't get to the bottom of this. So I will get to the bottom of this, but it's going to take me a little time.
Because Tulsi Gabbard says that she believes there are aliens. Do you believe that?
I don't, it's interesting. I wouldn't say that I do or don't believe it. I mean, I'm a big believer that there are things out there that we can't explain. And so if another person sees an alien, maybe I see an angel or a demon. So I'm a big believer that there are like spiritual forces working on the physical world that a lot of us don't see and a lot of us don't understand and a lot of us don't appreciate. But, is it aliens or is it our guardian angel, or is it aliens or is it a not so guardian force that doesn't care about us or in fact actively wishes us harm? I don't know the answer to that question. What I try to do is I try to say my prayers. I try to be as good of a person as I can be, and I try to do a good job. And hopefully that's all I need to do.
So it's very interesting there that Vice President Vance is saying that he's interested in the UFO issue, that it fascinates him, but he tries to distance himself from it in terms of like saying, well, it's kind of getting into tinfoil hat territory if you talk too much about it. But he believes, as he said, that there's kind of like these spiritual forces out there that others would consider to be aliens, and that he talks with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, about the UFO issue. But it's very clear that he wants to get to the bottom of it. And I think that's probably a sign that he was tasked by President Trump to get to the bottom of it. So can a vice president of the United States get to the bottom of the UFO issue if the president wants him to? Well, this is where we get into the whole idea of who controls these unacknowledged special access programs dealing with UFOs. I mean, the way these are set up, they have people who manage them, people who decide who gets access to these these SAPs, and typically the requirement for getting access is not so much that you have the right security clearance, whether it's top secret or cryptographic, level 31, 32, whatever people might cite, but that you have the special compartment that's associated with that particular program. But ultimately it comes down to, do you have need to know? Now, what happens is that any official, whether it's Secretary of State, Vice President, even the President himself, they can approach the people running these SAPs and say, I want access. And the managers will say, well, yes, you have the right security clearances, sir, but you don't have a demonstrable need to know. So I'm going to deny you access. And too bad, if you're vice president, you don't have access because the security manager says you don't have a need to know. And so they have to demonstrate that they have a need to know. And so this is where it gets interesting, because I think the reason why J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio are struggling to get to the bottom of the UFO issue is that they're being denied access, even though they're the vice president on the one hand or Secretary of State on the other hand. They're told by these security managers of these SAPs, you don't have a need to know, sir, and that's it. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Now, what happens if 3i Atlas reveals itself to be a spacecraft, or extraterrestrials start revealing craft to the world by 2027, as many predict? So that means sometime in the next 3 years, 2026, 2027, all of a sudden, it's very clear that there are extraterrestrials up in the sky, in craft, and the people, American citizens, will want to know, what is that? Well, the vice president and the secretary of state will then have a need to know. And they can go to these security managers and say, hey, guess what? I now have a need to know. So tell me, what the F is going on? All right, so that's how I think it'll probably play out at the end of the day, because, that's the way the system is set up, that politicians are considered to be part-time. They come and go every 4 years, 6 years for a senator, or if they get re-elected, maybe they're a little longer. But the people who manage these programs, they're there for 20, 30, 40 years. And so they consider themselves the custodians of these SAPs, and they're the ones that make the decision who gets access, regardless of the position of any elected official or appointed official. Right, so now, okay, I just did an interview today, and here's the link to me discussing 3i Atlas for an hour with Shawn Attwood and his partner. And so that you can go to the YouTube channel for that, which is Shawn Attwood. And and my interview with him will be there, and it runs for an hour. So I get to talk at length about 3i Atlas. So if you're still not sick of 3i Atlas, there's more to come. Okay. All right. So that takes me to the announcement I want to make now for my next monthly briefing. Every month or every 6 weeks, I hold a briefing where I do a roundup of the top exopolitics stories over the previous 4 or 6 weeks, and also get to touch on some major geopolitical events from an exopolitics perspective. And so for this particular monthly briefing, we're going to be looking again at some of the topical events, and what's really been dominating things is 3i Atlas, and the subtitle I have there, World on Alert as 3i Atlas approaches. I mean, that's not clickbait. I mean, that really is what's happening, that from November 27 through to January 27, the International Asteroid Warning System is activated for 3i Atlas. So it'll be all eyes on 3i Atlas for 2 months. And that is because there is likely to be some major events concerning 3i Atlas which will change things forever. So that'll be really, I'll be giving the latest information, the latest scientific data by November 15 on 3i Atlas as it approaches, and any new information about that and what else is happening around the world. So I want to thank you for tuning in and watching and supporting and subscribing to my different channels, whether it's on X, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Telegram. I really do appreciate it. It all helps. And special shout out to all my Patreon supporters. You've made an incredible difference in supporting my Exopolitics Today show. We can put out a lot of free stuff, including this week in review, because of your support. And so everyone benefits. So thank you very much. Aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.